a bit more about what TfL are doing for the public realm, because there's a great move towards greening our streets or reducing the width of roads and making the pedestrian have a better experience, as Terry Farrell says, so that the pedestrian is king. So what plans have TfL for better public realm?
TfL is doing a huge amount in terms of public realm. We actually produced a book which I think you can get online, and we still might have some hard copies available, called Delivering Better Streets. And it is about the work that we've done in conjunction with boroughs and with lots of other stakeholders about improving that balance between the road and the car use or vehicle use and the pedestrian and cycle use. So you'll have seen it, I think, probably all over London, the certain areas, streets that have been pedestrianised, other streets where pavements have been extended, the traffic barriers have been taken down. I can't remember what the figures were, but it was something like 200 kilometres of those awful sort of barriers taken down to make the public realm much more attractive, permeable, planting. Boris has got this ambition to plant thousands of trees within the public realm. It's all about making London a better place to live and making those streets better places to be. And that was sort of fundamentally part of the Roads Task Force work, which I showed you a slide of there, where it is about, yes, sure, there's got to be movement depending on the scale of that road and where it sits in that sort of 9-point hierarchy of roads, but it's also about the place. It's about people being able to walk and live, meet and play in those streets, which I'm sure is something that some of the other speakers are probably going to talk about and pick up on.
I think, if you look back, whenever trains came into London, there was always a fantastic station built, whether it be Euston or King's Cross, with great architecture. And that seems to have kind of tailed off, you could say, in the last 50 years, and a little bit more has been done now with the rebuilding of King's Cross and refurbishment of other places. A lot of people would criticise that road engineers, for example, that you would work with, road engineers have killed off the pedestrian experience. How do TfL, the engineering department, work with architects and planners to ensure that it's kind of design-led rather than engineering-led?
Well, that's a good question. It's what we tend to do. We're infiltrating slowly these sort of houses of engineers that sit there and design the roads, and we are, I think, certainly winning. Battle's probably the wrong word, but we're persuading those engineers and all those that are involved in the design of those roads and those spaces and those better junctions about the benefits of good urban design, good public realm. And I think we're sort of winning the battle. We're doing it, as I said, through persuasion. We think that's the best way to do it. It's great, of course, to have Boris in terms of the policies that are in the London Plan and in the Mayor's Transport Strategy as well, which allude to design and how important it is. But on a day-to-day basis, it's about educating them. It's a sort of it's a joint process, really. There's always something to learn from traffic engineers about their thinking and how they approach roads, but it's very much about persuasion and getting them to see the right side.
Certainly when the Jubilee line was constructed for the Jubilee year, there were fantastic designs for all of the actual stations themselves, and that was because that was really the procurement method that you were actually, which was really good. But if you're talking about the mayor now, let's say there's a new mayor, and let's say he's a UKIP mayor. Does that mean that he might change all the policies, he or she might change all the policies that you've already got in place? How do you have continuity when you have a change in mayor?
I think in terms of TfL and GLA, it would be very difficult to say. All I think that we're doing at the moment is, when I say all, and that sounds as though it's not a lot, but I think we are sort of laying the foundations for good design in terms of public transport, in terms of the spaces and the places in London. And just as an example, and going back to that sort of rail example,
yeah.
Northern Line extension, which I worked on for quite a while, which I'm delighted to say got the order got confirmed. I don't think it was yesterday, I think it was the day before, which was fantastic news. We're looking at two new stations on the network for the Northern Line, one at Nine Elms and one at Battersea. With Battersea, it's going to be, we're still looking at the sort of the different options and permutations, but it's going to be either within, or could be in both, a Geary building and a Foster's building. So that's pretty good and pretty iconic. For the Nine Elms building, the station with the oversight development, we're working with two architects at the moment, with Grimshaw and John McCaslin and Partners. So in terms of design, in terms of the stations and the public realm around those stations, I think we're still pushing very hard in that respect.
Well, that's good. Would anybody like to ask a question? If you can raise your hand, I can see one here. There's a roving mic. Anybody else, if you want to? Yeah, there's a few here. Okay, that's great. Okay, if you can just say your name and maybe what your background is, that would help.
Do TfL think it's, or me, do I think it's achievable to get to the Northern European standards in terms of cycling, where 25 to 30% of people, or even higher, I think in Copenhagen anyway, travel to and from work or basically cycle. I think it's going to be a challenge. Initially, there was I think the mayor said 2%, a few years ago, 2% of people cycled as a mode share, and the mayor sort of set a target, initial target of 5%. And as you might know, and you probably do, Andrew Gilligan, as the cycling czar for the mayor, has been sort of championing this, pushing, talking to all the sort of boroughs, developing a series of quiet ways and a grid of routes across central London, and of course working with TfL in terms of our cycle superhighways. We now have a north-south link being considered in huge detail, and an east-west link, so a sort of cycle cross link, if you like. Those are going to help significantly, and I think that we are going to very easily exceed the 5%. Just as a cyclist myself, I see an increasing number of people on the route that I travel. I cycle about 6 miles to and from work, and I've seen a real growth in terms of the number of cyclists that are using the route that I use, and anecdotally, people in the office, there are a lot of people, of course, that cycle as well, and they've seen that growth. So I think the more we can sort of push and get a proper sort of cycle network in London, the more we're going to see those percentages rise. We certainly, as part of the urban design team, just because it needed doing, we looked at a cycle strategy for the VNEB area. An area, for those of you who don't know it, is experiencing massive growth at the moment. Buildings are flying up left, right and centre, and that's what the Northern Line extension was about. It was about supporting that growth. But rather than trying to sort of retrofit cycling into roads which are being designed and built and changed as we speak, this was about trying to anticipate that and say, let's get a network of cycle routes in there. We know what are going to be the main desire lines, where people are going to be travelling up through and into the city, which are going to be the more leisure-related routes. Let's try and get that network agreed so that it's an agenda for discussions with developers, and we can actually start dropping in pieces of that jigsaw puzzle to try and encourage safe and convenient cycling in that part of London. And what Andrew and the boroughs are doing across the rest of London is magnificent, and it's following that sort of approach.
Still a long way to go, clearly.
Yeah.
I think we would all agree that. Okay, well, could I take one more question over here, please?
Hello, Jack from Living Streets. You just mentioned a reduction in car use in your presentation.
Yep.
At TfL, do you consider that to be a blip, and what kind of impact is that having on your kind of long-term forecasting of design for streets and places? It's
a very good question, Jack. No, we don't think it's a blip. It seems to be it's a trend, and we're sort of very delighted with that. And it is about all those improvements to the roads in terms of making them better places to be and to live and walk down. So inevitably that's a good thing. And I think the densification, which I mentioned in terms of central London, which we're seeing, and that is spreading out. That is going to mean more people can either cycle easily or walk to work, and that's going to be key in sort of terms of reducing the number of car traffic on the road. Sorry, the second part of your question was?
How that's kind of being discussed within the kind of long-term forecasting of TfL's vision and plans and designs.
I think in terms of the road task force work, there are, of course, moving cars, freight, servicing, all of those sorts of things around London is absolutely essential, important, and we shouldn't forget how key that is. That happens on certain roads, and those roads are being, if you like, that function of those roads is being protected. But in terms of what we're doing with regard to the environment of those roads, we're trying to improve those, and the road task force work and the work that TfL is doing alongside that is showing how you can implement that, even on roads which are pretty heavily trafficked. What it does do, of course, is with the 9 different types of roads, as you get down to the sort of more residential streets, the area given over to vehicles is actually reducing, so making it a much better and more livable place to be.
But still a long way to go, and now you know who to contact. So keep the campaigns going. Robin's the man to contact. Please put your hands together to say thank you. Thanks very much. Okay,